Hey guys, I'm Chris Buck and a very warm welcome to Friday Fretworks. This week's video is going to be about a fairly kind of broad theme, I guess, but something I've been getting a hell of a lot of questions about recently, especially in light of a few announcements I've made in regard to companies I'm working with, companies whose gear I use, or companies that I'm maybe now officially affiliated with, and that is endorsement relationships. It's been clear from a few questions that I've had and a few pointed comments in my direction here and there. Nothing particularly venomous, just a few kind of really looking to kind of stick a knife in a little bit and let me know what they think. Comments appearing throughout Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. It's clear that there are a couple of very kind of common misconceptions, I guess, about endorsement relationships in general, and just the whole kind of relationship back and forth that goes on between a company and an artist when you are officially affiliated with that company or endorsed by them. So a few days ago I put out a post on Instagram just asking if anyone had any kind of broad questions or conversely any specific questions in regards to my endorsement relationships that they wanted to know, and the response was massive. I had about 150 odd questions, I think, within which was a couple of common themes appearing, and I've tried to whittle those down into a few questions. I've got a kind of cheat question sheet here I'm going to be consulting throughout the video to try to answer what are evidently some of the common questions and misunderstandings about endorsement relationships. And hopefully the point of this video is to try and dispel the notion that it's just about the free gear. So let's take it away. Since I mentioned free gear, I think that's probably the obvious place to start, because that was undoubtedly the most common question that I had, is do I get free gear? And without giving too much of a politician's, beat about the bush kind of answer to that question, yes, ultimately, in certain situations and in actual fact with all of the companies that I'm associated with, part of the relationship is free gear. Free in the sense that I don't pay for it, and not free in the sense that you're kind of expected to work for that gear. You're expected to it's very much a two-way street, which is, again, a very common misunderstanding about endorsement relationships, is that it's all about the free gear. They give you stuff, that's the end of. Far from that. It's very much a two-way relationship, and it's about building a relationship based on trust and, all the other kind of platitudes and cliches that you can say about building any relationship. It is undoubtedly just a relationship built on mutual trust, that if they're going to give you gear, you are going to use that gear publicly and very much sell that gear for them. Even if that doesn't translate into me going out and going, you should buy this guitar, this is incredible, which I would never outright do. That is the kind of implied message behind me using maybe a Yamaha Revstar or using a Victory amp or using Radio Shop pickups. That is very much the implied message, is that buy this stuff, it's cool, it sounds great. And if I'm ever doing a video about a product or a guitar or whatever by a company who I'm affiliated, I will be very open about that and very upfront and kind of lead you to make your own decisions. But in response to whether I get free gear, yes, ultimately. But as I said, you're kind of expected to work for that gear in return. So it's not a gift just out of the goodness of their hearts and they want to give you some free stuff. That's not how it works, unfortunately. Another question that was very commonly asked and appeared, as I said, in various different guises, what are various companies looking for? I've kind of answered that in the first question, I guess. Ultimately, they want you to use that gear and sell it for them. That's what it boils down to. And I said, even if it's not an outright statement of you should go and buy this guitar, it's what is very much inferred from me or anyone else in a position of, I don't know, how would I put it, kind of authority, I guess, or in a position where people look up to a little bit. That's the inferred message behind me using a particular product, is that it's good and I like it and you should buy it too. That's kind of how it works. That's what companies are looking for, is for you to, responsibly use that product, whatever it may be. A good question I had was, what is more important for a brand? Social media following or live audience, I guess, ultimately. And it's a bit of a difficult one, and I can obviously only speak from my experience, but I think it's a mixture of both, to be honest. Especially in my case, I'm a musician who does a hell of a lot of online stuff. You're watching this video on my YouTube channel, which is kind of indicative of that. I do Instagram, I do Facebook, all the kind of, the stuff necessary to be a musician that is looking to do what I do in the 21st century. So I'm very much active and very much present on social media. So for a company maybe like Yamaha or like Victory more recently, an expectation of the relationship is that I will post about that gear on social media. That's a part of the agreement that I have with these companies. Obviously, there are certain situations where if you're a particularly well-known artist or musician of any description, if you're going to be seen to be using that gear in a live setting, you're obviously exposed instantaneously to either a couple of hundred people or a couple of thousand people if you're in a big band. And obviously that again is a very valuable facet for a company, knowing that they're going to be exposed in one fell swoop to lots of people. So for me personally, I would say it's probably a mixture of both, but in the 21st century, to be honest, there's increasingly less musicians and increasingly less bands and artists who are really commanding that kind of level of audience. So I would probably say social media, to be honest, which ties into a point I'm going to answer later in regard to how you would go about getting endorsed if you so wish, which was another very common question, is build your social media presence. If you are serious about it, it's kind of necessary to do these days. It's be on social media, be present, and be very much consistent about what you post being of good quality. Another very common question I had was who approaches who? Should I approach the brand or should the brand approach me? And again, there's no kind of cast iron answer in this respect. It's very much dependent on a case-by-case basis. So to take some of the endorsement relationships I have as example, with Yamaha, it's a bit of a weird one with Yamaha, I guess, in that Yamaha approached me a good few years ago, even in the first band that I was in. They got in touch to see if I would be interested in using the Pacificas, the new line of Pacificas that they were bringing out around that time. They came across to a gig we had in London, brought some guitars, I tried them out, and the band split up not long after that, so the relationship never really progressed beyond that point. But more recently, I'd kind of obviously built a little bit of a relationship with the guys at Yamaha. So when I happened to try a rev start in a guitar shop and very much liked what I heard and liked what I played, I got in touch with Yamaha. Obviously there was a little bit of a kind of in, if you want to call it that, with that particular company, but I was very much the one doing the approaching in that respect. In regards to maybe Victory, they approached me through various kind of channels, etc., but that was the other way round. So it can really kind of vary, to be honest. In regard to Alvarez, again, Alvarez kind of came to me through Blackstar, who were distributing Alvarez at the time, but it's very much on a case-by-case basis. I wouldn't be, quick to kind of castigate anyone who gets in touch with brands themselves, which is what I did, to be honest, with Yamaha, as I've just said. So it's, take it on a case-by-case basis, and if you feel so compelled to contact a company because you love their gear, which should be the underlying message, don't contact the company just because you're looking for free stuff. Contact a company. In my case, it was getting in touch with Yamaha because I played the Rev Star. I'd built a little bit of a relationship with Yamaha prior to that, and I very much liked what I played and what I heard and wanted to explore that further. So, be sensible is what it boils down to. Don't just go in search of free stuff. Good question I had was, what are the artist's responsibilities in an endorsement relationship? I guess I've kind of covered that in so many words, but when you are endorsed by a company, you by default become an extension of that company. You're a representative of them online or in real life at gigs, and part of that is just an understanding or a kind of mutual unsaid agreement that you're going to be sensible with that. You're not going to be a dick online, you're not going to be abusive, you're not going to be inconsiderate or just not sensible with your kind of the power, whatever it is that you may yield, whether that's social media followers or whether that's gig attendance, and you're going to treat the brand with respect and be a good ambassador for that brand. I think, without waffling on too much around it, that's what brands expect, is for you to be sensible and you to be considerate with something that they've given you ultimately. Good question I had was my most valuable endorsement, which, to be honest, it didn't take much thinking about, and it's not a slight on any of the brands that I work with. It's just a kind of, an accepted fact for me, at least, that strings. I get through strings at a rate of knots. Mates of mine call me swamp hands. I sweat like a lunatic when I play, and I'll just get through strings at a rate of knots. I don't tend to snap strings all that often, but I think that's because I tend to change them before they get to a point where they would be likely to snap, to be honest. I'm endorsed by Ernie Ball, so that's kind of my most valuable endorsement in the truest sense, in that I get through strings at a rate of knots. So having that kind of relationship in place is invaluable to me. A good one, and this is one I probably should have answered at the top of the video, because this was undoubtedly at the core of a lot of the misconceptions and pointed comments I had in my direction, is, do they pay you? And again, as much as I gave you a straight answer at the start of the video, no, I don't get paid. I don't get paid by Yamaha, I don't get paid by Alvarez, by Ernie Ball. I have a relationship with Radio Shop, which is slightly different in that Radio Shop have a product out which bears my name, for which I earn a royalty rate because it is a signature product. But aside from that, I don't get money from any of the companies who I endorse. There will be situations that arise maybe with Yamaha, where I will go and do a Yamaha event, such as playing for the Music Messe out in Frankfurt, or maybe doing a Yamaha event in London, which will be a paid service ultimately. But aside from that, I don't get commission, I don't get anything. It's not how endorsement relationships work. So if you're looking to get into it for money, you're barking well up the wrong tree. It's very much a case of, a mutual respect between two people, the artist and the brand, and just an understanding that you want to promote that brand because you believe in it and because they believe in you. That's the kind of the reward in this scenario. It's not a financial one. So yeah, hope that kind of irons out a few questions and a few comments I've had recently in my direction. A good one was, how strict are brands in terms of you having to use their gear? I don't know whether I can speak for many people in this respect, in that I don't have any contractual obligations with any of the brands that I use. It's not a case of, read the small print. It's definitely not a case of read the large print. I don't have anything written or anything signed with any of the brands that I work with. Again, as I've said, it's just a common sense approach that, you use their gear. And I guess you don't use competitors' gear, which is another question I had. Be sensible. Don't use something that is in direct competition with them. So, for example, while I was with Blackstar, which is something I'll come on to in a minute, I was always very careful, even if they were amps that I maybe owned, which I knew were in a similar price range or competitive within that kind of market, I wouldn't use them, ever. Definitely not alongside Blackstar, because it very much sends mixed messages and it's not being responsible with the situation that you're in. Another very common one I had was tips for getting endorsed. It's a strange one, to be honest. As I've said, 21st century, it's very kind of dependent almost on you having a social media presence, and as a kind of consequence of that, a social media following. I've taken care over the past few years to really build my social media following, whether that's Instagram, whether that's Facebook, whether it's YouTube, what you're watching now. Just taking care to build all of my social media accounts, and again, make sure I use those responsibly. Make sure I use them to really kind of be just sensible with whichever brands it is that I'm representing in those videos. It's unfortunate, I guess, that within the 21st century you can't really exist if you're not present on social media and letting people know what you're up to. As cool as it would have been to be a band like Led Zeppelin, where there was that mystique and enigma built up around the fact that they didn't release singles, and if you wanted to see them, you would have to go to a show. Can't really do that anymore, unfortunately, as much as it would be cool and much as it would probably be more artistic to do that, to be honest. It's just build a following, be good at what you do, and be someone that brands are likely to trust with their representation online or in person. Here's a good one. Are you ever tempted to exaggerate how much you like a product? No, ultimately. It would be disingenuous, and it really wouldn't be beneficial to either you or the company or the brand that you're representing. I guess it's an easy trap to fall into, and if there's contractual obligations in place or anything more official than I have with any of the companies that I work with, you may fall into the kind of pitfall of being a little bit disingenuous in what you say on occasion. What I would say is that I go out of my way to not be associated with any companies or any product that I know I won't like, or something that I just don't like flat out. If I get sent a pedal which I don't like, it will go back to the manufacturer, as opposed to me doing a video and either misleading you into maybe buying that pedal, when I don't like it myself, or trying to make something which I don't like sound good, or just getting yourself into kind of hot water in that respect. It's hard to say it, I guess, without sounding a little bit kind of arrogant or aloof, but it's kind of part of what I do is getting sent free gear, or at least getting approached quite frequently to see if I want something. And as much as I guess try to appreciate that, musicians who are not in that position, that may seem very enviable, it kind of scared me to realise that the first time I realised that people very much bought something on my say-so, or the fact that I use something. Going into endorsement relationships, Blackstar were the first company that I were ever kind of, associated with. And I remember getting a message off someone, I remember it vividly, getting a message off someone saying, I saw you using the Blackstar S150 and I've just bought it. what are your settings? And that was a real kind of shock of, oh wow, I actually have influence here in what people buy. And it's a little bit scary, and that was a real kind of reality check in terms of, if I use something that I don't believe in, what if someone then buys that and gets in touch with me, or doesn't get in touch with me and just doesn't like it, and they kind of feel conned, or they feel like they've been tricked into getting something which maybe I wouldn't personally use. So the offer of free gear is kind of always there, to be honest, from companies who see my social media presence, see the fact that I do videos, and are very keen to use that and, you know, try and get their message out to a bigger audience, or maybe an audience that they wouldn't ordinarily be associated with. It's part of what I do, and it's part of what they do ultimately. But, you know, I would never be tempted to exaggerate how much I like something, because I wouldn't be using a product if I didn't like it in the first place. I guess that's the take-home message there. Another one, which kind of ties into a question earlier, was what is the easiest way to work towards an endorsement? First and foremost, get good at what you do, whether it's singing, whether it's playing piano, whether it's being a drummer, whether it's being a guitar player, whether it's being a whatever. Get good at what you do. And then after that, if it's relevant to your particular genre or your particular field, look to kind of branch into social media. That would be my advice. It's a great place these days of being found, and there are, you know, fantastic musicians kind of exist just within that kind of internet world, to be honest. You know, it wouldn't surprise me to learn a lot of the musicians, or a lot of the guitar players, which a lot of people really look up to on Instagram, don't actually gig live at all. It really wouldn't surprise me. And not that there's anything wrong with that at all. It's just, if anything, it's testament to the power of the internet, and it's testament to the power of social media. So I think that would be a very key bit of advice, is grow your brand, grow your social media, whether it's YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, whatever. Grow it, and grow it responsibly. You know, be a kind of role model, and be quick to answer people's questions, be helpful to your fans. If people are kind enough to take the time to write into you asking you a question, or leave you a kind comment, at the very least like their comment. And if they leave questions, take the time when you can to answer those questions. That would be my tip in regard to getting endorsed, because companies will look at that, see you being responsible with the fan base that you've built, and will want to, you know, are more likely at least to want to get involved with you. Lastly, just to address the situation, I guess, which was the catalyst for a lot of the comments I've had in my direction regarding endorsements, is what is the situation with Blackstar. To start at the start, as I said earlier, I kind of referenced that Blackstar were the first company that ever got in touch with me. And as a kind of slightly wet behind the ears, 21-year-old, 20-year-old, whatever I was at the time, the fact that I had a company getting into contact with me was kind of mind-blowing, to be honest. It was just, especially a company as big and as reputable and as kind of, you know, as much of a force as they have become within the industry as Blackstar are, the fact that they were getting in touch with little old me was very cool, and I will forever be incredibly grateful for the fact that they did so. I used Blackstar pretty much exclusively for around 7 years, and the only reason I'm not using Blackstar anymore, as I've touched upon earlier, it's not a financial thing. Blackstar never gave me money, and Victory will no doubt never give me money to play their amps. It's not how it works. It was a purely artistic decision, in the sense that I just wanted to kind of play around with some other stuff. You know, it's, as I said in the kind of message that I put on Facebook, it's a big old musical canvas, and every now and then it's nice to have some new brushes to paint with. And for me, the reverb in the V40 that I'm using is very cool. I can get lost in that. It's such a lush, natural, real spring reverb, two-driven spring reverb, that really kind of lends itself to the style of music that I play. And every now and then it's just nice to freshen things up a little bit and throw yourself in at the deep end with some gear that is new to you. It just inspires different stuff, and, you know, brings out different things out of you which may not have happened otherwise. I've always been fairly candid about the fact that I do very much see guitars, amps, pedals, strings, etc., as tools of my trade. And, you know, different tools inspire different ideas, different songs, different playing, different, you know, just a different array of ideas that come out of you. And if you can achieve that through experimenting with different gear, then that's, you know, one of the things. There we go. I hope that answers some questions. Honestly, the kind of take-home message from this video is endorsements are not about free gear. It's very much a two-way relationship, and it's back and forth between you and a company that you used and respected anyway, in advance of getting in contact with them, or maybe them getting in contact with you. It needs to be something that fundamentally is built on trust and built on an understanding that you're going to be responsible with each other's image and each other's brand. That's endorsement in a nutshell. I hope that answers some questions. As ever, I've been Chris Buck, and I shall see you next week for a less talking orientated episode of Friday Fretworks. Cheers, guys, and happy Christmas.